Hello everybody, it's Stephen here for the Idiot Quilter, and welcome to episode 95. Hard to believe I've had that many episodes so far, but I have. And today we're going to talk about some of my projects, what I'm working on, what I'm planning to work on. Going to talk about a new book that I'm really excited that I just received. Going to talk also about some new fabrics I found, and I want your opinion as to which pattern I should do with these new fabrics, and a few other things as well. So let's get right into everything. Behind me is my grandmother's quilt. That's what I'm calling it. As you know, it's based upon my the quilt that my grandmother made for me back in the late 70s, early 80s. Can't pinpoint down the date exactly. I had that quilt for a while, and I think she made it probably in around 81, 82, something like that. I think. I don't know. I'm guessing. But anyways, here's how far I've gotten so far. Wow, rented lips this morning. Okay, here's what it looks like right now. And it's coming along really quite nicely. Now that's basically the first half of the top minus borders and things like that. I have got the other strips all sewn together. There are 16 rows with 12 blocks in each, and I just yesterday finished sewing those rows together, as in the long strips. Now I got to put all those rows together and then put the bottom half onto this. But I'm really liking this. I think it's turning out really nice. And if you remember, this is the one where I decided it's a drunkard's path design to make each one of those blocks, but I'm not sewing curves. I did it as applique using my circular sewing tool. And I'm going to show you something else that I was experimenting with that has to do with the circular sewing tool and 3D printing. Yes, 3D printing, but we'll come to that in a minute. So as I said, I'm very happy with this, and probably by the end of the week I will have the second half of it on here, and I can start working on the borders. So that's what I've been working on. I haven't been doing that much sewing lately over the Christmas season, but I did I stayed at home because you have to, but I did join up with a virtual retreat one day sponsored by the Canadian Male Quilters group that's on Facebook that I belong to. And they call it the Canadian Male Quilters, but there were some American gentlemen in there. I think there was 6 or 7 of us altogether, maybe 8. And this was on Christmas Day. The proposal was put out there that, would anybody be interested in having a sewing session during Christmas Day? And the reason for that was that the organizer, Paul Leger, I think that's how you say his last name, he's in Ottawa, and he's sort of the head of our group. He thought that maybe there'd be some people who might be alone on Christmas Day, given the circumstances we're going through right now with COVID. And so he offered to set up a Zoom retreat. And yeah, that was kind of nice. Now, people came and went as the day progressed, of course, because some people had more commitments than others with, whatever they were doing for Christmas Day. But Walter and I joined in on it. And yes, Walter is not a quilter. He tried it once, didn't like it. But he was working on some embroidery projects. Actually, he was finishing up his second nutcracker done in an embroidery, 3D embroidery program. He'd already made one, but he got the other one done on Christmas Day. Well, better late than never, right? But anyways, he worked on that. I worked on this, and everybody else was working on other projects, and it was a lot of fun. Not that we were all laughing and chatting and going on and on. We did chat, but it was just sort of nice to sew with other people. That's what I like about retreats. It sort of inspires you, gives you the impetus to keep on going with your project. So that's where I got most of that done. That part you see during that session. So that was kind of fun. So what am I working on next? Well, Now, you know I said that I've got a list of things I want to do in 2021, and one of those things is to get my UFOs, quilted. But I saw some fabric, yes. Before the lockdown, here in southern Ontario, the whole of Ontario actually, we are locked down now. And we're locked down for the next 28 days. We officially started the lockdown on Boxing Day, December the 26th. So it'll be pretty much the tail end of January. And it might even go longer than that, depending on our numbers. And I think there's going to be some major increases in about the second week of January because people were being stupid and getting together with family and other people who do not live in their household for Christmas. Yeah, well, we're not going to go there because that's not what this is about. Anyways, before we got into the lockdown, we did make a visit over to our local quilt store by appointment only. Everything's safe, okay? You hear me say that all the time, but it really is. I'm not rationalizing it because we are following the rules, okay? Probably one of the few that are. And she had some of this new fabric in from Tim Holtz. And of course, if you watch my vlog, you know that I love Tim Holtz when it comes to mixed media. Well, these are the fabrics by Tim Holtz that she had in. Just hold these up. I think the colors are fantastic. I think the design leaves itself open for all kinds of possibilities. And I just loved it. So I bought 2 meters of each of these. And I believe it's called Abandoned. Let me take a look at the selvage here on one of them. I think the whole line is called Abandoned. It's by Free Spirit. It's part of Tim Holtz Eclectic Elements. Eclectic Elements. And yes, it's called Abandoned is the line. And this particular one is called Rusted Patina. And the other one is called, just give me a second here to find the selvage, Portland Street. I'm not sure why he calls it that. Well, yeah, I do know why he calls it that because he's got, he's got the names, inscriptions from old, probably from the 1800s, signs or the wording on a sign from different stores, and must have been on a Portland Street somewhere or whatever. Maybe made that up. But you know that Tim Holtz collects, old things and makes them into mixed media projects. And this fabric line is no different. Now, I bought 2 meters of both of those, as I'd said. But I also bought 2 meters of this yellow, which is not Tim Holtz. It's a yellow with a dot. And I thought it would go along with these very nicely. So I have those. I'm thinking they need to be done with a special pattern. And then I went through my stash too and looked for other fabrics that would go with it. And I came up with these 3 that I had in my stash. So yeah, I can't hold these all up to show you. Let me see if I can do this so I can show you all. I could point the camera down, couldn't I? Well, let me just get myself organized here. Okay, bad production quality, not organized. Okay, I'm going to try and point the camera down. Bear with me for just a second as I figure this out. See, I have this on this ring thing. You can probably see the reflection in my glasses. Oops, I just changed the color spectrum. Put that back up. Okay, there's a little knob here. It's on a tripod. Okay, here we go down and... yeah, I'm going to have to hold it. Okay, so here you go. I picked out these 3 from my stash, and these are the ones I bought. And this is sort of my color palette right now that I'm going to be using. Okay, let's put you back up. High tech here, really. Okay, so I went through my stash of patterns to find a pattern that I like. And I narrowed it down to these two, and because they're in plastic bags, I am going to take them out of the plastic bags because there's going to be a glare on these. Now, originally I pulled out about 6 or 7 patterns, and I sort of eliminated those, and by process of elimination, I guess you'd say, I narrowed it down to these two. I had Walter take a look too to see what he thought. So this is the first one. Now, of course, my colors are going to be totally different, but this one takes 5 colors, and I've got enough of these 5 colors that I can use them in this pattern. And I like the idea that this is like one big block. I think it measures 92 by 92, so that's a fair size quilt, and it's square. And I like stars. This one does not have, it's called No Diamonds in the Sky. It is by Calico Carriage Quilt Designs. Designer is Debbie Matty, and it says no Y seams at the top, and that's great because I don't want to deal with Y seams. I mean, I've done them before, don't like them. If I can avoid them, great. So no Y seams here, don't have to do it. So that's the first pattern. The other pattern is a little bit more modern, and it's an Angela Walters one, and I love Angela Walters, who doesn't? And this is one called, just try to fold it here, it's called the Feathered Arrows Quilt. And I think these fabrics would work very well in it, because basically what she has done it from is strips, jelly roll, and she just randomly picked her strips to create this. Now, that picture doesn't show you the whole thing, and I don't think she actually has. Okay, my fingers are not working here. Oh, here it is, yeah. There is a picture of what the whole thing would look like, which I think is kind of neat, very modern. It is not a huge quilt. This one measures 46 by 60. And there's a lot of white in the background. I don't know if I would use white. Probably would, though, because, you know, especially if you were focusing on these, you probably would want a white background to make those pop, because they're pretty busy. So those are the two that I'm thinking about doing. I'm leaning towards, though, the No Diamonds in the Sky one. So to make sure I have enough of this fabric, I went online looking for it. Now, my local quilt store has this fabric. That's where I bought it. But right now, they're in lockdown. They have an online store, but it's not fully, it doesn't show everything, and it doesn't show these fabrics on it yet. I could call them up and say, I want, you know, a couple of more meters of those two, and I can give them the numbers from the salvage. You know, I love my local quilt store really well. But if I send them an email for this, I don't know how soon I'm going to get an answer back. 2, I can either have it mailed to me, which is kind of stupid because it's in the same town I live in, or I can do curbside pickup. Why am I hesitating? I'm hesitating because I don't think they're at the level where they can efficiently get my order out to me. I'm sorry. I know that will be eventually, but right now I don't want to be the test case. So I went looking online for places that, you know, quite frankly, know what they're doing, because they've been doing it for a long time online. So I did find a place. Now, this is a new place for me, so I'm taking a bit of a chance here. Although so far I'm fairly impressed by their organization. I went online. It's called Northgate Sewing Center. And actually they're also a quilting store, and I think it was called Peachtree. I'm not sure now, and I don't have it handy here to look it up for you, but they're in Regina, Saskatchewan. And you know that during this time of lockdown, I want to support Canadian companies. Also, I support them because shipping and stuff like that tends to be a little more reasonable, and everything's in Canadian dollars, so no surprises on the exchange or anything like that. So I looked for, and I found them because I just put into Google search engine Tim Holtz Fabrics, and this place popped up. And I took a look, and they had this line, this abandoned line, but there are other fabrics in the line, which I don't know if my local store had or not. So I ordered 2 more meters of both of those ones that I just showed you, plus I ordered 2 meters each of 2 other fabrics that are in the line. So I'm going to hold back on deciding exactly what pattern I'm going to use until I get those other fabrics in, and you know, maybe there'll be a different pattern at that point when I see what they're like all together. So anyways, I will have enough fabric to do what I want to do. Plenty of it, actually. So I'm waiting for this. I ordered it yesterday. Within 2 hours of ordering it, I got a notice from them that said it had been shipped. It costs me about $18 Canadian for shipping. The fabric was a reasonable price. It was $16.50 a meter, which is a little more than I spend at my local quilt store, but I have never found any quilt store that has the prices that she has. She is the most reasonable. But so I'm paying a little bit more. I'm paying for shipping, so it's costing me about $170 in total. We'll see how fast I get it. I think it's coming by Canada Post. Expedite it, yes, we'll see. Canada Post is not that speedy, no matter, even though you pay extra for it to be, you know, shipped faster than the usual. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And the problem is it's coming from Regina. It'll hit Toronto. It'll go to the Black Hole of Calcutta called Mississauga, which is a big distribution center, and then it'll probably sit there for who knows how long before they ship it out to my town. It's a test. We'll see. I'm not in a hurry for this because this is a new project on my plate, which I said I wasn't going to do any more new projects until I got all the UFOs quilted, didn't I? Yeah, I lied. You know, you know what it's like. You have these great plans and then something gets you off track. Okay, so that's what I'm doing with those. Let's talk about UFOs. I'm going to show you UFO number 5 and number 6. So I have to get off my stool to do this. These ones I've had hanging up here for quite a while. Take my microphone with me. And this one was a class. It is a huge quilt, as you can see, and it is a Bargello. And I did it in a class at my local quilting store back, geez, it's hard to believe we've been in lockdown since March. So it was before March. I may have done this one in January of last year. I don't really remember the date, but there it is. I'm very happy with the way it turned out. So it needs to be layered and it needs to be quilted. That's a big job on that one. So that's UFO number 5. And let me slide that over and take you to number 6. And it's even bigger. It is definitely a queen size quilt, a little bigger. This was a class as well, and it was called the Mystery Quilt. I did cheat because I saw the whole pattern of it because I went searching for it online because I was a little uncomfortable not knowing what fabrics I needed for this. So I did cheat. I looked at what the final product was going to be. This one, yes, this one was kind of complicated to make sure you got all the pieces going the right way and put it in, because you can see it's made up of different styles of blocks, but I really, really love it. One thing about reviewing these UFOs for you, I forgot what these things look like because they're all folded up and hanging on a bar, and so now it just re-inspires me. How I'm going to quilt it, I have no idea. So I think I'm going to have to separate it down into sections and decide what kind of quilting I'm going to do in each section. I'm probably leaning towards a form of ruler foot quilting for this. I don't know yet. It's a gorgeous quilt though, isn't it? I think when I get it finished, if it turns out okay, I might replace the quilt that I've had for quite a while, one of my earlier quilts, on my bed, and this one might go on my bed. I really love it. Good job. I did a good job on that, didn't I? So, those are a couple of more UFOs. Am I done? No. I still have, I think, a couple of more UFOs. And in a sense, I've added one to them, the Wild and Loud quilt that was made from the scraps from my guild, and my own personal stash of scraps as well. And that's now on the UFO rack. And my grandmother's quilt's on the UFO rack. Well, not yet. That is that one. My grandmother's quilt is the one that I'm going to be working on, concentrating my efforts on right now. That's what I say. We'll see. Okay, so that takes us to, well, I debated whether I was going to discuss this or not, but it disturbed me. I'm not going to say who the person was because I don't know the person. And you won't find what I'm about to tell you in the comments. It was a comment, a couple of comments actually, on one of my episodes of the Idiot Quilter. I removed them. And I did that because they contributed nothing positive to that particular video. You know that I did a series of videos about my woes with my Janome 15,000. Now I've had several people, well, more than several, actually many people who have watched those videos because they've been experiencing similar problems with their machines. Now, I always tell you, I've always said this, I am not an expert on anything that I tell you. I am learning as I go. I've only been quilting and sewing now for about 2.5, well, maybe it's 3 years now. I've lost track. So, you know, yes, I've come a long way since then, but I am not an expert. Also, I am definitely not an expert about sewing machine problems and how to fix them. I am not a sewing machine technician. I just share with you what I've done, what my experiences have been, and what I have learned from others. But I do not claim, and I never have, that I'm an expert. So I got a comment on one of my videos on episode 62, where I talked about quilting on an embroidery machine. Okay, and I was showing how to use the embroidery features of my 15,000 to quilt. So this person wrote to me, and I am going to read you the comment. It says, "How much was your machine and where did you purchase it? I've looked at SMP, but there was no price under it and everyone is gone for the holidays. Thanks!" Exclamation mark. You're going to find this person likes exclamation marks quite a bit. Okay, fine. I found the tone of this comment somewhat demanding. Like SMP, I had to think, what was SMP? It suggested manufacturer's price, I think. But it says, "I've looked at SMP, but there was no price under it. And everybody's gone for the holidays. Thanks." I don't sell sewing machines. I am not a representative for Janome. Okay, so I'm assuming that this person is asking me how much I paid for my machine, kind of a thing, to give her maybe a ballpark figure of what she can expect to pay for one. Sound like she wanted one pretty quick. Well, yeah, the holidays are on. We are in COVID, so there's a lot of complications. You may not be able to get things as soon as possible. But I wrote back, and I simply wrote, I paid for my machine, well, my machine listed at $14,000 Canadian. I paid $7,500 Canadian for it because basically I got the last year's model at the time, and my local quilting store is excellent when it comes to pricing things. So they gave me a deal. Because quite frankly, I wouldn't have paid $14,000 for it because I couldn't afford that. But at $7,500, which is basically half the price, I thought, I can swing that. And I wanted that machine. So that's what I wrote. I just, that's what I paid. That's all I said. So I get another comment, though, right on the heels of this one, which had nothing to do with sewing. FYI, the last 6 minutes or so, the volume is very high. You might want to adjust it. Thanks! Exclamation mark, and then a whole lot of flower emojis. Okay, thank you for being helpful. But this was another video, a different one, episode 59, that she's responding to there. Well, okay, that's almost a year ago when I did that one, probably. It's too late to make the adjustment. I did check it out, and yeah, the last 6 minutes of it, as she said, was a little bit louder. I must have adjusted something on my microphone and didn't realize that at the time. You can still hear it. It is a bit louder. So I wrote back to her, I can't change it now. Like, in order to change it, I would have to take the whole video down, try to go in, edit it. I don't do a lot of editing of my videos, so I'm not an expert in editing them. Somehow adjust the volume down and put it back up. Well, that would be pointless because that video is old now. Nobody else complained about it. So my suggestion was, I said, sorry, I can't do anything about it now. Just turn down your volume. Now, I think she took offense to that comment. I think she thought I was being snarky. I wasn't. I was just saying that's what you do. But then I got this message from her. And this is the one that really bugged the ass off me. She wrote, Stephen Bland, gee, I'm sorry to have troubled you, Steve. Now, I'm reading this in the way it was written, and there's exclamation marks after every sentence. And some of it's in bold, so she's shouting at me as well, and you'll hear that. So, gee, I'm sorry to have troubled you, Steve. I asked because I'm buying a combo sewing / embroidery machine by the end of the year, in literally a few days. Okay, good for you. I certainly wouldn't have if I knew you were going to be so curt about it. I certainly wouldn't have if I knew you were going to be so curt about it. What? She certainly wouldn't be buying machine because I've been curt? I'm not sure what she means by that. You put yourself out there as a person who knows his sewing machine, so naturally I asked a question about a sewing machine. No, I don't. As I already explained, and I've explained this many times over in many of my videos, that I'm not an expert. I'm just sharing my experiences. I explained in my first comment that there were no prices on that website, and since I'm wanting to do this very same technique, your machine naturally interests me. No, you didn't explain that. Let's go back to that message, shall we? She said, how much was your machine? Where did you purchase it? I've looked at SMP, but there was no price under it, and everyone is gone for the holidays. Thanks. I asked a question about a sewing machine. I explained in my first comment there was no prices on that website, and since I'm wanting to do this very same technique, your machine naturally interests me. No, you didn't. You told me I've looked at SMP, but there was no price under it. Oh, and in my comment to that very first one, my reply back to her was, I did say to her also, maybe this is where she thinks I'm being curt, is I said, well, I don't know why you're asking me this because I'm not sure where you are in the world, but I bought it at my local quilt store, and unless you're in my area, that's probably not going to help you with anything. But I did give her the name of the quilt store and their website as well, just in case. She's never indicated where she's from. I suspect she's American. I don't know, maybe not. So, I was stating the obvious, Sure, I can tell you this information. I am telling you this information, but that's probably not going to help you in the situation you're in right now because of location. Okay, so she carries on. She goes, sorry. And as far as the music being loud, there isn't any music in that video. Yes, I turned my volume down. Okay, good for you. I kind of figured you might like to know. Not really, not at this point. If it had been one that I had just put up, probably, because then I could probably have done something about it. But, you know, look at the number. If you're going through and you're looking at my videos in the channel, you can tell that, well, there's a date on it as well. So you could tell when I put it up. I would if it was my channel. Well, it's not your channel, sweetheart. In fact, I went to her channel. She has nothing on there whatsoever. So she's not a content creator. So quite frankly, I take that comment with a grain of salt, because obviously she doesn't make content, so she doesn't really know what's involved. Again, ... Sorry! Exclamation mark. Jeez. Okay. Bitch. Sorry, but she is. Don't know her. I'm judging her by her comments. But I think she's a lady who has some other issues. I think she might have been having a bad day, maybe some frustration. I'm trying to see her side of it. Maybe some frustration in what she's been trying to do over the holiday period, and given all the restrictions of the holidays and of COVID and all the other stuff. And yes, I can understand how that can get your goat, but we need to have patience. Lashing out at me as a content creator is not going to make your situation any better. And I didn't think there needed to be that on there, because I know some people would get on there and probably reply to her, and not necessarily in a positive way. And I don't need people having little fights on my channel. Okay, that's not what it's about. So I removed her. My prerogative, my channel. I can do that. So anyways, I just want to reiterate again, I am not an expert about sewing machines. I am not a dealer for sewing machines. I simply tell you what has happened to me. And there it is. So this person, we won't worry about her. She has bigger issues to look after, I think. Okay, so let's move on. Thank you for letting me share that, because actually that was cathartic for me. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. Let's look at a shout out today. And it's a shout out to Janome themselves. They have a YouTube channel. Now, I'll have to say that I have found their videos somewhat helpful, but you have to read between the lines and pick up those pieces of information that are helpful to you, because they are trying to sell their machines, okay, on that channel. But having said that, it does show you accessories you may not know that are available out there, and there are some tips and tricks and techniques that you can glean from those videos. So it is helpful in that way. Just beware, you are going to get a sales pitch pretty much on every one of those videos for some product that they have. But it's worth a look at, especially if you own a Janome machine. Well, only if you own a Janome machine, really. So there you are. And I've put the link to that in my show notes, so you can go right to it if you're interested. Okay, you've seen the new fabric that I bought. I haven't bought anything else new in terms of fabric, but I did buy, now I bought this back in October. Electric Quilt Company, they're the people that make the software that helps you design a quilt. And I own that product, and I'm still learning how to use it as time goes by. They have come out with this book. Well, they didn't write the book. This book is written by Barbara Breckman. It's called The Encyclopedia of Pieced Quilt Patterns, 3rd edition. It is heavy. It is thick. It is very, very useful. This lady started way back in the late 60s, I think, compiling lists on index cards about different quilt blocks, and, you know, researching what they are called, and all that kind of thing. And she made little drawings of each block. Well, it has now progressed to the 3rd edition in a book, and it has thousands and thousands of blocks. So this book is useful for many, many purposes. One, you can just go through it, browse through it if you're looking for something to design a quilt around. new pattern. Or if you heard of the name of a block, you can look in here, and it's cross-referenced as well for it on other names. Maybe you do research on, say, a quilt you've picked up somewhere, or an heirloom quilt in your family, and you're not really sure what the blocks are called. You can look it up in here. So very useful book. It is an encyclopedia. So I purchased it, not cheap, okay. I pre-ordered it in October. They shipped it December the 1st, and I got it December the 23rd, which I guess is okay. They did say it wasn't going to be shipped until the 1st of December, and they were true to their word. They shipped it December 1st. So I got it. Now, I think this book was about $69.99 American, I think, or maybe a little less than that. But of course, I'm Canadian, so I had the exchange on it. Then I had shipping on it. So this book cost me $100, basically, $100 Canadian to get. But I think it is something that any serious quilter needs to have in their book collection. Now, EQ8, that's the name of the program, the version I have right now. But Electric Quilt, the company, is coming out in the spring with a companion piece of software to go along with this, where you can look these blocks up and design in EQ8 a quilt using those blocks. And of course, if you're not familiar with Electric Quilt, the program, it actually helps you design, and it tells you how much fabric you're going to need and how to cut it and that kind of thing. It's not an actual pattern that it prints, but it prints you the dimensions, and if you're doing foundation paper piecing kind of thing, it'll print those out for you as well. So, and I figure I'll probably order that as well to go along with the book, because, in for a penny, in for a pound kind of a thing. But I think the two working in conjunction with each other would be extremely helpful. So yeah, so I'm sure they still have these available. Go to the Electric Quilt, I think it's just called electricquilt.com, I think is their site. And I'm sure you can find it and purchase it if you're interested. And as far as I know, they're the only people that are selling it. Now, I didn't look on Amazon to see because it just came out, but I think they have the exclusive rights to it right now. But if you can find it someplace else and you can get it for a better price, go for it. Okay, so I want to show you something. This has to do, I mentioned earlier, 3D printing and quilting, and I'm trying to combine the two worlds. So I want to show you something that I printed out and what I have done with it. I saw in my travels on 3D printing sites, I saw this file that you could download and print out that created this 3-part system that created this. This was the diagram they showed, and it's basically a star in a circle, which is in a square. Okay, and these are the tools, the templates. So I printed them out on my printer. And there's one, there's the other, and then this piece as well. And these all put together will help you to make this star in a circle design. So I printed them out, and yes, these work really well as templates because it printed them fairly thick. As you can see, it's nice hard plastic, and your rotary cutter goes right along the edge, no problem. And so, yes, they work for cutting things out. Unfortunately, what I didn't think of was that this involved a lot of Y seams. So I started to try and put it together the best I could, and, well, I stopped. This was well, not quite a disaster, but I found it very tedious, and I didn't do it right because this piece up here, well, I guess actually, no, this piece would sew up there. I just realized that now. You could get that sewn up there, but it's just too many bloody Y seams. Now, mind you, I probably wasn't doing them quite right. I should have gone back and reviewed a YouTube video that I find very helpful showing me how to do that kind of thing, and I could have done it from there. But I thought this was more of an experiment to see what I could do with the 3D printer in terms of templates. So, Am I going to make a quilt like that with those? Yes and no. Not this. No, that's garbage. But I decided to reinvent this and do it not unlike my grandmother's quilt, where I did the circle applique. So I already knew that I could take a square of fabric, put a circle in the center of that square of fabric, and use my circular sewing tool to do a blanket stitch all the way around it, because that's how I did my grandmother's quilt. And then I thought, well, the star part I could do as applique as well. And so I went to my Cricut machine and I cut out templates. So I have, and I decided on my sizes. So I have a 7-inch square. This is just on cardstock. And then I have, it worked out to be about a 5 1/4 inch circle, and then a 5-inch star. Now, I designed each of these pieces on my Cricut, and I cut them out just to create a prototype of what something like this might look like. So the next stage of this was to figure out how I was going to cut it out of fabric. Well, cutting a 7-inch square out of fabric, no big deal there. That's easy to do. Cutting out a 5 1/4 inch circle with my little circular sewing cutter, that works really well. You remember I've showed you this, I demoed it actually in a previous video. It's this thing right here. So that was easy. And then when it came to doing the star, well, what I did was I went back to my Cricut. Where is it? And I took a piece of heavy piece of cardboard, chipboard, and my Cricut can cut through that, and I cut out the star like that as my template. So then what I did was I took some steam-a-seam, I backed a piece of fabric for the circle, and then cut the circle out using the circular cutting tool, and adhered it to the square. Now I figured out where the center points were. I folded the square into quarters to find the center point. I did the same thing with the circle, found the center point, and lined it all up. So it's equal distant all the way around to the square. The star, I did pretty much the same thing. I put it on steam-a-seam. I took a pencil, traced out the star on the fabric, cut it out, lined it up where it should go, and there it is. So it's raw edge applique, okay? Then I put the whole thing on my sewing machine, and I used my circular sewing tool that I used with my grandmother's quilt and did the blanket stitch all the way around the circle. Then I put on my applique foot, and I did a blanket stitch all the way around the star. And actually, I'm getting much better at, and it comes with practice, with machine applique. So there you go. Now, what am I going to do with this, do you say? Well, nothing immediately, but I'm thinking you can basically use up some scraps that you have and create a series of these blocks and then put it all together as a quilt. And I think that might be what I will do eventually. You know, when I'm a little bored with something else I'm doing, maybe I'll just, do one of these or a couple of these at a time, throw them in a little box, label it Star and Circle Quilt, and over time, when I get enough of these, I'll make it into a quilt. We'll see. Just one of those little projects, like, there are days when you don't really feel like sewing, but you feel you should be doing something productive. So something like this is easy enough to do. Just pull it out, takes you, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and that, feeds your need to feel like you've done something, that you got something accomplished. So again, though, it was because I created these, that I saw these, that I went to where I did with that block. There's probably more of these I'll have to look for that, don't involve Y seams. Well, I know there's others. So anyways, that's something I want to share with you. Okay, so that takes us pretty much to the end of this episode, except just a couple of things that are coming up. I have some more sew days with my guild. They decide they're going to do a New Year's Eve one, starting at 7 o'clock in the evening and running until, well, they're calling it sew until you drop kind of a thing. So how long people want to be on there. It's kind of like a New Year's Eve party, except we're sewing. I'm not sure I'll be part of that. That night, because not that we're doing anything exciting on New Year's Eve, but you know, if Walter wants to join in, fine. I think he probably can, but he probably won't. So, you know, I think we should be doing something together, even if it just means, you know, having a few glasses of wine and watching fireworks on YouTube or something with it. But then the next day, New Year's Day, they're doing a sew day as well, starting at 12 noon. That one I think I will participate in too. So I like sew days, and I like them on Zoom because, one, I don't have to lug all my stuff to an actual physical place, even if we could right now. And as I said, when you're sewing with other people, even in a virtual environment, it kind of gets you in the mood. It kind of spurs me on anyways, and I get a lot of things accomplished. So that's what's coming up in terms of sewing and quilting, and you've seen all my projects and what I'm working on. So yeah, so that's it for me today. I hope you glean something, or you put this on as background to your own sewing. You know, you don't have to look at me, you can just listen to me, whatever. And yeah, so we'll see what we're going to be doing next week. So stay tuned for another Idiot Quilter, probably sometime in a week's time. Have a great one. Happy sewing. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.